The lawyer called at 7 in the morning. His name was Pryce. He worked for Meridian Land Solutions, and he had not slept. Dale could hear it in the first 3 words out of the man's mouth. Not a greeting. Not a good morning. Just a deal number and a project name, and the word frozen said twice in the same sentence. Dale was standing at the kitchen counter. He was eating toast, plain, no jam. He let Pryce talk. Pryce talked for 4 minutes without stopping. $9.4 million in equipment. Already on site. A groundbreaking announcement already sent to investors. A ribbon cutting already scheduled for the second week of June. A pipeline route locked in for 18 months. Every permit approved. Every parcel under contract. Crews already staged east of Liberal, Kansas, waiting on a signal that had not come. Except one parcel had not come through. 60 acres in the southwest corner of Meade County. Section 14. Cracked caliche soil, no structure, no water, no trees worth mentioning. Assessed at the county minimum for 22 consecutive years, taxed at $47 a year. The kind of land that showed up in county records the way a footnote shows up in a long report. Present, technically, but never the point. Sold at a public tax auction in the fall of 2001 for $290. Sold to Dale Harwick, 83 years old, standing in his kitchen, eating toast. Dale set the toast down. He said, "I know." He said it the way a man says something he has rehearsed in his head for a very long time, not because he expected to forget it, but because he wanted it to feel right when the moment finally came. Pryce went quiet, the particular quiet of a man who expected more words than 2. Dale thanked him. He said he would be available later in the week. He hung up. He stood at the counter for a moment. Outside the kitchen window, the Kansas flat ran west until the sky caught it, brown and wide and still. Somewhere out in that direction, 60 acres of cracked dirt sat untouched, as it had sat for 23 years, waiting for this exact morning. Dale walked to the kitchen table. He pulled open the second drawer. Inside, sitting exactly where he had last put it, was a blue spiral notebook with a water stain on the cover. Margaret had bought it for him at the Rexall drugstore in October of 2001. He had set a coffee cup on it one rainy afternoon years ago without thinking, and the stain had dried into the shape of a half moon. He did not open the notebook. He already knew what was inside. The auction had been held on a Tuesday. Meade County Courthouse Annex, ground floor, the room they used for zoning hearings and the occasional 4-H meeting. Metal folding tables set up in 3 rows. A coffee pot on a card table near the back wall. Stacks of paper cups beside it, the small kind that made your hand too warm. A woman named Connie at the sign-in table by the door, running a clipboard with the efficiency of someone who had done this for 15 years and expected nothing interesting to happen today. 12 people in the room, give or take. Dale had signed in at 8:47 in the morning. He poured himself a cup of coffee. He found a spot near the back wall, away from the rows of folding chairs, and he stood there with his cup and did not talk to anyone. He had the auction list folded in his shirt pocket. He had already read it 3 times. The man who had driven down from Wichita did not stand near the back. His name was Garrett Wills. He ran a land acquisition company out of Wichita called GW Holdings. He came through the door at 9:01 with a jacket that had his company logo stitched on the chest and an associate who walked 1 step behind him like a shadow that took notes. He had a clipboard of his own. He had the posture of a man who had already decided how the morning would go. Wills bought 4 parcels before Dale's lot came up. He moved fast. He bid clean. He shook Connie's hand after each one like a man collecting things he was owed. Between lots, he talked to his associate in a low voice, and the associate wrote things down. Dale watched him. He said nothing. He drank his coffee. When Connie called out the lot number for Section 14, 60 acres, southwest quarter, assessed minimum value, tax delinquent since 1997, opening bid $290. Wills turned to his associate and said something. The associate smiled. It was the kind of smile that happens when something is so small it reads as funny. Nobody raised a paddle. The room was quiet. Connie waited. Dale raised his. Wills turned and looked at him. Not a long look, not a careful one. The kind of look a man gives a stray dog that has wandered into the wrong yard. Quick, slightly amused, and already finished before it started, Wills said, "You serious, old-timer?" He said it loud enough that the 2 rows of folding chairs heard it. He said it the way a man does when he is not actually asking. When the question is just a way of making sure everyone in the room is in on the joke. A man near the front made a sound. A woman beside him made a different one. Not cruel. Just the kind of surprised noise people make when something strikes a whole room as obvious. Connie called it once, twice, a 3rd time. Her voice had the flat patience of a woman who had seen stranger things. Dale's was the only paddle up. She said, "Sold, $290, number 31. Will shook his head once. The small shake of a man filing something away in the mental category of things not worth thinking about. He said something to his associate too low for Dale to hear. The associate wrote it down. Dale walked to Connie's table. He signed the receipt. She handed him his copy, stapled to a yellow carbon sheet. He folded it once, lengthwise, and put it in his coat pocket. He walked back to the coffee pot. He poured a second cup. He stood by the back wall for the rest of the auction. He did not look at Wills. He did not look at the two people who had made noise when he raised his paddle. He watched the remaining lots go through. He watched Wills buy 3 more parcels, each time with the same brisk efficiency, the same handshake, the same note from the associate. None of them were Section 14. None of them were what Wills actually needed. Dale drank the second cup slow. He left when the room started clearing. He did not say goodbye to anyone. He drove home on the county road with the receipt folded in his coat pocket and the radio off. Margaret was at the kitchen table when he came in. She looked up from whatever she was reading. She said, "Well," not a question, just a word that meant she was ready to hear it. He set the folded receipt on the table in front of her. She picked it up. She unfolded it. She read the lot number, the legal description, the acreage, the sale price. She set it back down on the table without refolding it. She said, $290. He sat down across from her. He said, "Yep." She looked at him the way she had been looking at him for 24 years. The look that meant she was running numbers in her head that he had not given her, that she was solving for something he had not stated. It was the same look she had used the time he spent 6 months reading county drainage maps before any water problems showed up, and the time he drove 40 miles to a records office in Garden City for a file that turned out to matter 2 years later. She said, "You're sure about this one?" He said, "I'm sure." She held his eyes for 3 more seconds. Then she nodded. She picked up what she had been reading and went back to it. That was all. Dale got up. He took the notebook out of the second drawer. He sat back down. He uncapped his pen. He wrote 4 lines in the notebook: the lot number, the date, the price, and the exact time the receipt had gone into his coat pocket. Then he sat there with the notebook open and the pen capped in his hand. Outside, the road was empty. The afternoon light was flat and white. 60 acres of crack-dead, caliche-baked Kansas land sat out in the southwest corner of the county, and not a single person in Meade County. Not Garrett Wills with his company jacket and his associate and his 4 other lots. Not Connie with her clipboard and her paper cups. Not the man who had laughed from the front row. Had the first idea why Dale Harwick had paid $290 for land that looked like the county had been trying to get rid of it for 40 years. Dale knew why. He had known why since the spring of 1999. He had spent 2 years making sure he was right before he ever walked through that door. He closed the notebook. He put it back in the second drawer. He finished the last of his coffee, cold now, not minding. The receipt was still in his coat pocket. He left it there. Before this gets even crazier, hit subscribe. Because what Dale pulls out of that notebook is something nobody in that auction room was even close to seeing. Don't miss it. March 1999, Meade County Public Library. 3rd table from the back wall. Dale had been coming here every Saturday for 6 weeks, not to read novels, not to borrow movies. He was reading microfilm, and he had the kind of focus that made the librarian stop asking him if he needed help. He was 60 years old. He had just retired from 32 years of surveying county roads for the state of Kansas. 32 years of reading plat maps the way most men read the sports page, not for entertainment, because the land kept a record, and Dale believed the record. He had found the first piece of it by accident. He was pulling microfilm reels on abandoned infrastructure studies, old road plans, dead-end drainage projects, a 1974 state highway expansion that never broke ground. Routine reading for a man who had spent his career knowing what lay beneath the surface of a county. Reel 4, filed under the wrong label. Kansas Corporation Commission 1956. He almost put it back. He didn't. The document was a route survey, 61 pages, commissioned by a gas company called Southwestern Continental Holdings. The survey had studied the southwest quarter of Meade County for potential natural gas infrastructure. The geology under that corridor, specifically under a stretch running northeast to southwest, roughly 12 feet wide at its narrowest crossing point, sat on a continuous limestone shelf, 18 to 22 feet down, porous, stable. The cheapest drilling substrate in the region by a margin the report called significant. The corridor had been surveyed, mapped, flagged as preferred. And then Southwestern Continental Holdings went bankrupt in 1961. The survey was filed. The project was shelved. The corridor was never formally dissolved under state commission records. It was still on the books. Dale photocopied the relevant pages, all 11 of them. He put the copies in a manila envelope. He drove home. He did not tell Margaret yet. He needed to check 3 more things first. The second thing was the ownership chain. He pulled assessor records going back to 1943. The 60-acre parcel in Section 14 had changed hands 4 times in 58 years. None of the owners had built on it. None had used it. The soil was wrong for crops. Too shallow for a well. The county kept assessing it at minimum taxable value because no one had ever given them a reason to assess it differently. 4 owners, 58 years, $47 in annual taxes every spring. That was the full story of that land to everyone who had ever looked at it. Dale wrote the chain of ownership in his notebook. Dates, names, prices paid. He noted that the current owner was delinquent since 1997. He underlined that. The third thing was harder to find. He spent 4 more Saturdays in the library and 2 afternoons at the county assessor's office before he found it. A secondary engineering study, this one from 1974, commissioned by a different company, Great Plains Infrastructure Partners, that had independently arrived at the same corridor, same limestone shelf, same northeast to southwest line, same 12-foot access point in the southwest quarter of Section 14, same 60 acres. 2 different companies, 2 different decades, the same conclusion both times. Dale sat with that for a long time. He drove home. He sat at the kitchen table. He spread out his copies and his notes and a county plat map he had picked up at the assessor's office. He drew a line with a pencil, 12 feet wide, northeast to southwest, right through the 60 acres. Margaret came in from the back door. She set her bag down. She looked at the table. She looked at the line. She said, "Is that the Harrow parcel?" He said, "It is." She pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. She looked at the map for a while. She said, "What do you see?" He tapped the pencil line. Southwest to northeast, through the narrowest point of the 60 acres. She looked at it another moment. She said, "All right." She got up and put the kettle on. That was the last question she ever asked about the land. Dale watched the parcel for the next 18 months. He drove out once a month, parked on the county road, wrote down whatever he saw. At first, nothing. Brown dirt, wind, a rusted fence post. Then, in August of 1999, survey flags, orange ones, set at intervals along the northeast edge of the parcel. He wrote that down. October 1999, fresh tire tracks, wide tread, not a farm vehicle. He wrote that down. March 2000, an LLC purchased 3 parcels east, buyer listed as a holding company out of Wichita. No public name attached. He wrote that down. May 2000, another LLC purchase, 2 parcels north. Same general pattern, same style of filing. June 2000, a third purchase. This one 120 acres on the northeast side of the corridor. Dale stopped writing and looked at the notebook. He turned back to the hand-drawn map on the kitchen table and started counting parcels. Someone was assembling land, quietly, through holding companies, piece by piece. Working east to west along the corridor, they had bought 280 acres. They still needed the 60. He went back to the library one more time. He pulled the Corporation Commission filings again. He read the easement language in the 1956 survey more carefully than he had the first time. The language said the preferred corridor required uninterrupted surface access at the 12-foot crossing point in the southwest quarter of Section 14. Uninterrupted, not approximate, not adjacent, not near. The exact 12-foot strip ran through the 60 acres and nowhere else. The limestone shelf angled north at that point and came within 14 feet of the surface. Anywhere else along the line, the drilling cost tripled. Without the 60 acres, the corridor did not work. Without the corridor, 280 acres of assembled land became a collection of random parcels. Dale drove home. He sat at the kitchen table. He opened the notebook to a fresh page. He wrote one number, $290. He wrote one line beneath it. Whoever is buying east of Section 14 is going to need this parcel eventually. They just don't know it yet. He closed the notebook. He looked at the hand-drawn map. The line ran right through the middle of the 60 acres, straight and clean and quiet. $312,000. That was the number the man on the front porch said before Dale had even opened the screen door all the way. Young man, late 20s, clean jacket. Company name on his card, though Dale had already seen that name on LLC filings in the assessor's database. He was holding a clipboard like it was something impressive. Dale looked at him. He said, "Come in. I'll put coffee on." His name was Tanner. He worked in acquisitions for a firm called Meridian Land Solutions. He sat at the kitchen table. He laid out a 1-page summary. He pointed to the number at the bottom. $312,000. For 60 acres of land Dale had bought for $290. He said, "That's a significant return, Mr. Harwick." Dale poured 2 cups. He sat down across from the young man. He said, "It is." Tanner waited. He had the kind of smile that expected the deal to close itself. Dale drank his coffee. Tanner said, "Is there a number that works better for you?" Dale said. Tanner blinked. He said, "No to this number," or Dale said, "No to a sale." He stood up. He thanked Tanner for the coffee visit. He walked him to the door. Tanner stood on the porch for a moment. He looked at the 60 acres, brown, cracked. Wind blowing across it like it blew across everything out here. He said, I don't understand. Dale said, I know. He closed the door. He mowed the strip twice a year, spring and fall. 60 acres was not much to mow. It took him 3 hours on the riding mower. He wore the same hat every time, the green one with the feed store logo nearly worn off. He paid the tax bill every April, 47 by check, on time, without fail. He kept the survey markers visible. He walked the perimeter once a year. He wrote the date of each walk in the notebook. Nobody bothered the land. Nobody built on it. Nobody even drove past it most days. Dale kept watching anyway. The second offer came by phone. A county official named Birch, formal voice, the kind of voice that expected to be taken seriously. He said Meridian had engaged the county in preliminary discussions around infrastructure easements. He said the county had an interest in supporting economic development in the Southwest Corridor. He said there were mechanisms available, not eminent domain. He was careful to say not eminent domain, but there were processes. He said he hoped Dale understood the opportunity. He offered $480,000 on behalf of an unnamed acquiring party. Dale said, I appreciate the call, Mr. Birch. Birch waited. Dale said, tell him no. The line was quiet. Birch said, Mr. Harwick, I want to make sure you understand the figure. Dale said, I understand figures just fine. He thanked him and hung up. He wrote the amount in the notebook. He wrote the date. He wrote the word decline next to it. Margaret was standing at the sink. She did not turn around, but he could see her shoulders go still for just a moment. She said, higher than last time. He said, yep. She said, good. The third offer came in person. The man's name was Aldrich. He worked for Meridian directly, not an agent, not a county official. The man himself, briefcase and all, driving up the gravel road in a car that cost more than most people's houses. Dale opened the door before Aldrich knocked. He poured coffee without being asked. Aldrich sat. He opened his briefcase. He placed a folder on the table and slid it across. Dale opened it. He looked at the number, $740,000. He closed the folder. He pushed it back. Aldrich said, Mr. Harwick, I need you to understand what this project means for this county. Jobs, tax revenue, infrastructure. Dale said, I'm sure. Aldrich said, then why? Dale said, not for sale. Aldrich looked at him for a long time. He was a careful man. He did not show much. But something moved behind his eyes. The first trace of something he had probably not felt in a long time. He said, every piece of land has a price. Dale said, yep. He stood up. Aldrich packed his briefcase. He said very quietly that there would be other options. He said the legal team was reviewing all available instruments. Dale walked him to the door. Aldrich said, this isn't over. Dale said, I know. He watched the car back down the gravel road and disappear. He went inside. He sat at the kitchen table. He opened the notebook. He wrote, Aldrich, $740,000, declined. He mentioned legal options. That means they're running out of room. He capped the pen. Margaret brought 2 cups of coffee without being asked and sat across from him. She did not say anything. Dale looked at the notebook. Then he looked up at her. He said, you never asked me once why I wouldn't sell. She said, I know why. He said, why? She said, because you already know how it ends. Their daughter's name was Claire. She had been 12 years old the summer Dale first drove her out to the parcel to show her the survey markers. She had stood in the brown dirt and squinted at the orange flags and asked, why does a strip of dirt need markers? He had said, because someone's going to want to know exactly where it starts and ends someday. She had looked at him the way kids look at adults when the answer doesn't quite land yet. She said, but it's just dirt. He said, most important things look like just dirt until they don't. She had not understood, not then. 3 floors up in a Wichita building in the spring of 2023, Garrett Wills was on a call that was not going well. He had been on similar calls every quarter for 2 years, same project, same parcel, same name on the title. His lawyer was explaining again that the voluntary sale route had been exhausted, that the county facilitation effort had produced nothing, that a direct corporate approach had been rebuffed without negotiation. Wills said, what about the abandonment angle? His lawyer went quiet. Then the lawyer said, that's a difficult argument to make when the county has been issuing a tax bill to the same owner every year for 22 years. Wills said, find me something. The lawyer said he would look. He did not sound confident. Dale was sitting on the porch on a Tuesday morning in October, coffee in one hand, notebook on the armrest. He had just written the date and the weather and the fact that the survey markers along the north line were still clean. His phone buzzed, unfamiliar number, Wichita area code. He looked at it. He picked up. The voice on the line said $740,000 before Dale had said a word. Same number Aldrich had offered 3 years earlier. Like the man on the other end believed repetition might accomplish what reason had failed to do. Like if you said a number loud enough, long enough, to a quiet enough man, he would eventually just get tired and take it. Dale let the number sit in the air for a moment. He said, "That number didn't work last time." The voice identified itself as Harlan Pryce, legal counsel, Meridian Land Solutions. He had a careful voice, the kind that had been trained to sound reasonable while doing something that wasn't. Dale knew the name. He had been expecting it for 2 weeks. Pryce said the project timeline was critical. He said there were investors, a board, a June deadline that was not flexible. He said Meridian was prepared to move immediately, wire transfer, no title contingencies, clean close within 10 business days. He said the 740 was a starting point, not a ceiling. He left that last part hanging. Dale looked out the kitchen window. The flat Kansas distance ran west until it ran out of room. Somewhere in that direction, 60 acres of cracked caliche sat holding up a $9 million equipment inventory and the career of at least one project manager who had probably not slept in a week. Dale said, "Call back when you have something new." He hung up. He sat at the kitchen table. He pulled open the second drawer. He took out the notebook and set it in front of him without opening it. He sat with his hands flat on the table on either side of it, like a man holding something steady. He had been waiting 23 years for the other side to run out of road. They were out of road. The voice on the line said $740,000 before Dale had said a word. Same number Aldrich had offered 3 years earlier. Like repetition might do what logic had failed to do. Dale said that number didn't work last time. The voice identified itself as Harlan Pryce, legal counsel, Meridian Land Solutions, careful voice, trained to sound reasonable while doing something that wasn't. Pryce said the project timeline was critical. Investors, a board, a June deadline. The 740 was a starting point, not a ceiling. Dale said, "Call back when you have something new." He hung up. Claire drove down that Friday. 4 years as a property attorney in Wichita. 2 years before that, clerking for a district judge who handled nothing but land disputes across 3 western Kansas counties. She had her mother's way of walking into a room and reading it before she spoke. She set her bag down. She looked at the kitchen table. Dale had already laid it out. The original deed recorded October 2001. The 1956 Kansas Corporation Commission Route Survey, 61 pages, easement language on page 31, tabbed in yellow. 22 years of tax receipts, paper-clipped by decade. The notebook. The manila envelope from the library, still holding 11 photocopied pages from a microfilm reel misfold for 43 years. Everything Dale had known since before he raised a paddle for $290. Claire sat down and read. She did not rush. She said, "Dad, how long have you had all of this?" He said, "Since before I bought the land." She picked up the manila envelope. She looked at the date stamp in the corner of the top sheet, March 1999. 2.5 years before the auction. She set it down carefully. She said they filed an abandonment claim. They're arguing the 2001 deed has a title defect. Outstanding lien from the previous owner never discharged before the tax sale. Dale opened the notebook to a page tabbed with yellow near the back. He slid it across. A photocopy of a lien discharge. Filed in 1999 by the previous owner as part of a probate settlement. Cleared and stamped by the county clerk on August 14, 1999, 2 full years before the auction. Claire read it twice. She said, "So there's no defect." He said, "Never was one." She picked up her phone and called Pryce. She did not raise her voice. She told him the abandonment claim would fail in any hearing room in Kansas because the parcel had been taxed continuously for 22 years without a single gap, and because the alleged lien was discharged in August 1999, and because she had the original filing in her hand and would have it certified by Monday morning. She said, "You can file if you'd like." 4 seconds of silence. She said, "Or we can talk about what my father actually wants." The hearing was 17 days later. Same courthouse where Dale had signed a receipt at a folding table 23 years before. Claire placed 3 documents on the table: the 1956 KCC survey, the 1999 lien discharge, 22 consecutive years of tax records, same owner, same parcel, paid in full, no gap. Meridian's attorney argued for 11 minutes. He used the phrase constructive abandonment 4 times. He had the expression of a man building a case he already knew wouldn't hold. The hearing officer looked at the documents, then at Meridian's attorney. She said the parcel was never abandoned. The county was taxing it continuously. She said, "This proceeding is closed." Meridian's attorney reached for his phone before he cleared his chair. On the drive back, Dale said, "I don't want a lump sum." Claire said, "I know, I already told them." She said they pushed back twice, then they accepted every term. Permanent easement, 30 feet wide, northeast to southwest through Section 14, following the 1956 corridor line exactly. One-time transfer fee of $340,000. Quarterly payments of $8,700 indexed to inflation for the operational life of the pipeline. Fully transferable to Claire and her children, not a sale. An arrangement that would outlast him and keep going, Dale said. Good. She waited. He said the coffee at the courthouse was better than I expected. She laughed. Her mother's laugh exactly. They signed on a Thursday morning at the county clerk's office. Tammy stamped the documents and handed Dale his copy and said she had been hearing about that parcel since her first week on the job. Dale folded the easement agreement once and put it in his coat pocket. Same pocket where the $290 receipt had lived for 23 years. He walked to his truck alone. He sat without starting the engine. He picked up the blue spiral notebook, half-moon water stain on the cover, bought by Margaret at the drugstore in October 2001. He opened it to the last clean page. He uncapped the pen. He wrote the date, the quarterly payment, the number $290 below it with a single line connecting them. Then one sentence. Margaret, I told you I knew how it ended. He closed the notebook. He looked at the flat Kansas sky above the courthouse roof. He started the truck and drove home. Garrett Wills read about the easement agreement in the Meade County Weekly paper the following Thursday morning. He had no comment for the reporter who called. There was no comment to give. At the barbershop in Liberal, Kansas, where Dale got his hair cut twice a year, a man named Roy was reading the same paper. Roy had been standing near the coffee pot at the courthouse annex in October of 2001. He had been one of the two men who laughed when the auctioneer called Section 14 sold for $290 to the quiet man in the back. Roy read the article through to the end. He set the paper down on his knee. He did not say anything for a long time. Then he said, he always did seem like he knew something the rest of us didn't. Nobody in the barbershop disagreed. Some men look at 60 acres of cracked, wind-stripped, caliche-hard Kansas land and see a waste of a Tuesday morning. Dale Harwick looked at the same 60 acres and saw a 1956 filing that nobody else in the county had ever thought to read. Would you have taken the $740,000 all at once, or held out for the deal that pays every quarter for the rest of your life? Drop your answer below. And if you want to see the next piece of land nobody else is paying attention to, subscribe. The notebook's already got a new page.